Behind the headlines
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
On the next Rizkan show, world-renowned feminist Eve Ensler explains her latest project to empower the numerous victims of sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Rizkan at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back to Top Stories here on Al Jazeera. Egypt's Prime Minister, General Ahmed Shafiq, has resigned. His replacement is Essam Sharaf, who previously won accolades for trying to kickstart a new nationwide transport initiative. There's been another air attack on the Libyan oil town of Brega, but rebels say they're pushing Gaddafi forces back. The International Criminal Court has announced a full investigation into alleged human rights violations in Libya. Speaking in The Hague in the Netherlands, prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo says Gaddafi's supporters have already been identified. Our correspondent Alan Fisher has more from The Hague.
Mr. Ocampo is convinced the investigation will take just a matter of months. The UN Security Council handed it over to the ICC essentially Sunday night, Monday morning. He has seen enough from television pictures and from hearing from eyewitnesses to believe that there is a case to be investigated, and that is why that is now underway. Now, I've been speaking to Mr. Ocampo within the last hour or so and asking him what form this investigation will actually take.
There is a clear information and indication that there are serious allegations of crime against humanity committed in some of the demonstrations since 15th of February. And we have some information about security forces shooting them. No information about bombing on civilians until today, but shooting, yes. So that is enough to start an investigation. We are not saying who is guilty, but we start the investigation today. So from today, we'll try to collect evidence. So that's my next step.
There are people watching this who may wonder, what do you mean by crimes against humanity? How do you classify that?
Crime against humanity is a widespread attack against civilian population. So if you have security forces shooting civilians in a square who are doing a demonstration, this is a crime against, this could be a crime against humanity.
Once he has completed his inquiry, he will hand over all his evidence to the ICC judges. They will then go through it and decide if arrest warrants could be issued. But Mr. Ocampo has put people in the regime on notice. We are watching you is essentially what he's saying. Also, he said, with the rebels now having weapons, they too could face the possibility of being investigated if they start anything on the scale of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in Libya.
Well, as we've mentioned, there's been a fierce battle for the oil town of Brega. Tony Bertley reports.
It was a call to arms that was answered by thousands. From the towns and the desert, opposition fighters gathered in Ajdabia to repel an attack by forces loyal to Gaddafi. Their weapons ranged from the powerful tanks and anti-aircraft batteries to those more at home in a museum. There was confusion and disorganization. Shells were fired out, complaints returned as residents ahead explained they were coming under fire from their own side.
What about the capability? I mean, you've got a lot of men here and you've got a lot of weapons. Can the men use the weapons?
God willing, they will learn to use the weapons effectively.
The conviction of the volunteers has to be admired. The capability is open to question. Gaddafi's forces were said to number around 300 men. They attacked the strategically important town of Brega at first light, and witnesses said they began firing indiscriminately.
This is in the morning. Many people come in mafia for Gaddafi. He killed many people in the morning.
Heavy weapons were sent forward and hundreds of trucks and cars stacked with ammo and guns taken from captured army stockpiles. Casualties came back. Many hurt, he told us, many dead.
This doesn't seem to have been a full-fledged assault, more like a probing attack. But it shows that Gaddafi forces are strong, they can strike at will, and that the Libyan leader shows no signs of giving up. Quite the contrary, he's hitting back.
10 kilometers from Brega and more forces congregated. No one seemed to know exactly what was happening. Then a Libyan Air Force bomber circled overhead. Its first bombing run hit close to the centre of the fighting near Brega University. The second hit our position. Landing 70 metres away. Miraculously, no one was hurt. Then Gaddafi's fighters fled.
We suddenly saw some Toyota cars with anti-aircraft batteries. They started firing mortar rounds. The shells fell near us.
They left behind spent mortar, shell and machine gun casings and 10 dead civilians. 21 people were wounded, including a 7-year-old boy who survived a bullet lodged in his nose.
These people who were killed, were they fighters or were they ordinary people?
Ordinary people. Ordinary people. He is going when Gaddafi's people. He is coming to university.
2 of the bodies were said to be of Gaddafi fighters. It was claimed one carried ID showing he was from Niger in Africa, but it's hard to verify. Despite the howls of bravado, this brazen attack has provoked both fear and anger and reminds everyone of the violent threats of Gaddafi. On Wednesday, we witnessed why the opposition is desperate for a no-fly zone and why it may not have the military capability to liberate all of Libya by force just yet. But this conflict seems far from over, and the question is how many more Libyans are going to die before it is. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Brega, Eastern Libya.
World food prices have hit a record high. According to the UN, prices rose by 2.2% last month. It's the 8th consecutive month that costs have risen. It's raised concern of a repeat of the food crises of 2007 and 2008, which triggered mass protests. The increase is being partly blamed on the rising price of oil. Some other news now. Security forces in Côte d'Ivoire have shot dead at least 6 women. According to witnesses, the women were killed as they were protesting in support of Alassane Ouattara. Fighting in Côte d'Ivoire has intensified as forces loyal to the incumbent president Laurent Gbagbo take on supporters of his rival Alassane Ouattara. Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes to seek refuge. Yvonne Ndege sent this update from Abuja in Nigeria.
Well, first of all, it's really difficult to establish the truth of what's going on. I mean, for example, the incident that was mentioned in your introduction regarding 6 women being killed in a Ouattara stronghold. As was reported, 6 people are reported to be dead. But when you speak to the military and to the police in Abidjan, they say that it's much less. But one thing is certain: the security situation seems to be deteriorating quite rapidly. However, it's also worth pointing out that despite many reports, there have been no clashes whatsoever between supporters of Alassane Ouattara and of Laurent Gbagbo. The clashes have always been between supporters of Alassane Ouattara, the internationally recognized winner of November's election, and members of the security forces. And those clashes have always been limited to one particular district of Abidjan, and that's Abobo. On the diplomatic front, efforts to sort this crisis out seem to be dead in the water. Presidents from the African Union were supposed to issue a report at the end of February.